before we can polish the bone that we printed, we need to first remove the supports and the raft. So I'm working over a trash can here, so I can just drop the waste into it. The raft should just peel off fairly easily. And most of the supports should come off with your bare hands. But do be careful not to accidentally break any part of the bone that you printed, especially like in this case, there are two that are joined. I don't want to accidentally separate them. And if you have a bone that you printed that has a small, delicate area, you want to be very careful when you're working around that area. But we can take off most of the supports with our bare hands. And anything that we can't take off with our bare hands, we can use these snips for. So if you see where the bone, or when the support joins the bone, there's a little bit of a gap there. And if you can use the snips, not to cut in, but just to slide under there, and I'm just twisting to get those pieces off. And then if there are any rough spots sticking out, like here, you can see there's a couple little individual pieces, then you can go ahead and snip those off. You want to try to get the surfaces as smooth as you can, without going overboard, but the smoothing process itself will take care of a lot of these imperfections, but the smoother you can make it before you even start the smoothing process, the nicer your results will be, and the quicker the smoothing process will finish. So I'm just going around and looking for any rough spots, just so you can also feel with your fingers to see where the rough spots might be. That's not too bad. You can also use an X-Acto knife. I mean, you obviously be very careful with this, right? You never want to slice towards yourself or, accidentally cut yourself. But the X-Acto knife can help either reach into some areas that you wouldn't be able to get to otherwise with just the clips, or just troll some pieces away that you can't get otherwise. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So now we'll move over to the polishing machine. I've got another bone here that's completely different from my earlier example. So I thought I would just work through the process of cleaning this as well, so you get a different experience. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is peel off the raft and whatever rough supports I can take off with just my bare fingers. Now here I've got these delicate, very thin areas, especially on this side, super thin. So I'm going to be very careful there not to accidentally break that. I'm just kind of gently pulling. There's a little extra piece there, but I'm going to leave that and take it off with the snips. Okay, I still got most of it off with my bare fingers, but there's a little spot here. And I'm not cutting at this point, I'm just twisting to get the main supports off. And if I see some little hairs sticking out here, I can go ahead and snip those. And over here, there's where the very thin piece of bone there. I'm just going to gently grab the support with the snips. I'm not cutting, but I'm just gently grabbing it and twisting, and it should just come right off. Very little pressure. So you can see how thin that is. It would have been very easy to break. I'll finish just snipping off any hairs or little tiny imperfections. A lot of times you can just run your fingers over the surfaces and feel where there might be a little roughness. And if the snips don't do it, you can always very carefully use an X-Acto knife. Whoops, a little too aggressive there. I cut into that edge. Maybe the polishing process will fill that in, but there was an example, unintentional, of being just a little too rough. Okay. Okay, I think the rest of this should smooth out in the polisher. We're now at the polishing station. The first thing we'll do is turn the machine on and then press the open close button. The polisher takes a long time to open on purpose, in particular because when the process is done, it doesn't want to release a cloud of rubbing alcohol vapor into the room. So it goes up slowly as the mist is being filtered out. Now we can lift up the outer clear area and rest it on the top. There's a top ridge that you can rest the clear outer casing on that holds it into place. Now we grab a hold of the lip of the cover, the solid cover, and lift it off. And if you look inside, it looks like the reservoir is about half full. That's okay, but we probably want to add a little bit more alcohol. You don't have to fill it all the way to the top, but I'd say about 3/4 of the way to the top is good. And again, what we're using is rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. Now I'm replacing the cover, not with the solid one that I took off, but with one that has some drainage slots built in, because we don't want the rubbing alcohol vapor to condense and pool on the bottom. So it'll be drained back into the reservoir. And in back here, that's the nebulizer, which will convert the rubbing alcohol into a mist. And this is a turntable, which will rotate the model so that it gets an even distribution of the rubbing alcohol vapors. We're going to put our model on a plate, but we want to make sure that the bottom of the plate doesn't stick to the turntable. Otherwise, it won't rotate. So I'm going to spray the top of the turntable and a little bit in the back so that some of the mist gets into the opening of the nebulizer. Now I'm going to slide the clear cover back in place. Now this plate is meant to slide over this support area, but the filament, as it combines chemically with the rubbing alcohol vapor, does drip off the model, and it can act as a kind of glue, keeping everything from moving. So I always spray the top of the support and also the bottom of the table so that it spins nice and easily. So now I've got my model. I'm not convinced that it will stand on its own upright. So what I'm going to do is lay it down so that it gets covered on one side, and then I'll switch it and do the other side. I'm going to start with the side that's the roughest. That's where the supports were. So I'm going to lay it down in the middle, and I'll actually give it a little spray to help it get started. And now press the open close button, and the model and the plate and the support are descending. There they are. And this middle knob, each click of the knob, you'll see a light come on. And for each click and each light means 5 minutes. So something like this size, remembering that the top part was a little rougher than the other side, I'm going to just go ahead and do it for, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. At least 30 minutes. And you can see in the back, the nebulizer immediately started creating a mist, and it's slowly filling up the chamber, and the model is rotating so that it will get a nice even coating. It's better to not put it in long enough than to put it in too long. But you don't want to be too picky about it either. I mean, don't do 5 minutes and then come back and do another 5 minutes. You know, if you do put it in too long and ruin the model, there's no real problem. You can just print another one and do it again. But if you crank it up all the way for a really small model, it is possible for a model to get oversaturated, and when that happens, it'll just sag in on itself. You can see here this one was in too long. In fact, it wasn't in the nebulizer at all. I tried to take a shortcut and dip the entire model into a vat of pure rubbing alcohol, or 99%, and it was just too much. It made the whole thing soft and rubbery. So don't make that mistake. But you're not likely to overdo it in the nebulizer because it's a gentle mist. And if you don't go over half an hour for your first shot, you should be fine. Unless, again, you have a really tiny model, in which case it might be a puddle of goo when you finish. For a tiny model, start with 10 minutes and then add more time if you need to. So we'll let that simmer for a while, and we'll come back and check it in half an hour. Okay, the half hour is done, and the bone looks pretty smooth on the top side. So we'll click open close. And I'm going to go ahead and put a glove on. The material is not toxic, but it is sticky and gooey, so just rather not have it on my fingers. So I'm just going to grab it and turn it over on the other side. And then press open close again. And set it for, let's say, 20 minutes. Because some mist did get to the bottom of the model, so it's been partially treated. It doesn't need the full half hour, most likely. This is what the machine looks like when the session has ended. You can see the lights are flashing and the mist is being filtered out. Once most of the mist is filtered out, the machine will beep again to let you know that it's safe to open. So now we can push the open button. So that actually looks pretty good. There's usually a little bit of excess rubbing alcohol on the plate, so I'm going to drain it over a waste paper basket. So over a waste paper basket, I'm just dripping off any excess rubbing alcohol that's on there. So that will help the model not to be too soft on the parts that are touching the drawing plate. And you'll notice that because of all the little spikes on the plate, only tiny portions of the plate are touching the model. So that allows for maximum air circulation and also minimizes the contact points, which will mar the surface slightly. So we may have to do a little bit of fine-tuning after this is completely dry, but now this is good to set aside. Probably don't want to touch it again for another couple hours at least. It's the end of the day today, so I'm going to set it aside overnight, and tomorrow morning when I come in, it will be okay to touch. If you touch it too soon, your fingers will stick to the model and also leave a fingerprint and mar the surface of the model. even after a couple hours or a day when you can touch the model and carry it around, you still want to be careful for several days because it takes quite a while to fully cure. And even after a couple weeks, it'll keep curing and curing. So you'll notice that it will get harder and harder and more shiny. But again, you will be able to touch it much sooner than that. While you're waiting for your model to dry, just place it on the wire rack beneath the polishing machines. The wire rack is open, so there's a good airflow that will help the model to dry more quickly and more evenly. Now that we're done with the polishing machine, we'll move the clear outer casing up and rest it on the lip at the top. We'll take off the cover that had the holes in it, and we'll replace it with a solid cover. And then finally, we'll just push the on-off button. You have to press and hold until it beeps, and then it will turn off. So that's all set. Okay, so it's the next day, and the smoothed bones look pretty good. I'll take it off the plate. A little bit stuck. There we go. Set the plate aside and look at the bottom. So you can see there's a little bit of excess material there on either end of the small bone. The large bone looks pretty good. There's a tiny little divot on this end where one of the spikes of the plate stuck onto the filament. But we can trim off these larger pieces here, so that'll make it look better. So I'm using a pair of snips, and I'm just sort of carefully trimming off the excess material. And I can even trim off that tiny little divot there. And the other end. And that looks pretty good. I think it's finished. You can see some layer lines. So if you wanted to, you could put it through the polisher again, repeat the process that we did before, but using much less time. I would put it through maybe 10 minutes on this side, and then another 10 minutes on the other side if you really want to try to get it completely smooth. But I think for the most part, almost all of the layer lines are gone. I don't know if I can zoom in close and see. It's very smooth except for a couple minor areas like over here. And looking at it overall, think it looks pretty good. I would call it done.